There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hey guys, so I filmed this video yesterday outside, and it was a little windy, so sometimes the audio was a little wonky. Mostly it's okay, but I'm going to do some surgical audio transplanting, and try to make it work, because when I got back home I filmed a second version of it, but by that point I'm still recovering from jet lag. I was tired again, and it just wasn't as lively as this first take, so I'm going to try to preserve and repair it, and I may add at the end a couple sentences from the end of the second take, a point that I failed to make in the first take, but please bear with me as I kind of create a Frankenstein video here, but I think it will all hang together. It's not just that I'm lazy and not wanting to redo this a third time, but I'm busy, and I've got two other big videos I want to make in the next few days, my December book haul part 2 and my December wrap-up, so let's make this happen. Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I can't believe it's nice enough for me to be outside on January 3rd. I think I'm pushing it a bit. It's a little cooler than I thought, and the wind is off and on. In fact, when I first pushed play on this video, the gust of wind almost blew my tripod with the iPad over, so we'll see how this goes, but right now it's okay. I am here with a review of Lorrie Moore's novel, Who Will Run the Frog Hospital, published in 1994. This was one of the last books I read in 2017. I read it on the plane coming back to Tokyo on New Year's Eve, and I loved it. I expected to, from the number of readers with whom I usually agree that loved it, but yes, I love this book and want to reread it soon. The narrator is a woman called Barrie, B-E-R-I-E, and we meet her in Paris on a trip with her husband. Their marriage is dead. They're trying to revive it by taking a trip together, but he's been a philanderer and they don't really care much for each other. I think on page 2 she says, "I feel his lack of love for me, but we are managing." So that's where that's at. So I think she's in her late 30s. She feels unmoored, and she's not sure who she is. So her mind and her memories travel back to 1972, when she was 15 and lived in an upstate New York town called Horse Hearts, and her best friend was a girl named Sills, S-I-L-S, so Barrie and Sills, and they worked together at a theme park called Storyland, and Sills dressed up as Cinderella and took children on little rides around the park in her pumpkin coach. Barrie, dressed in a pinafore and a goofy hat, managed the cash register admissions, and they would go off on their they'd take smoke breaks. They weren't supposed to be smoking, and got up and got into all manner of mischief. Sills was precociously sexual, with the body of a 20-year-old, and Barrie, as a 15-year-old, had the body of a 10-year-old. Sills was immensely popular, and Barrie was invisible to most of their peers. So it's the story of that friendship. And basically, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, even though I think probably more than what I'm going to say is on the back cover. I didn't check that. But basically, Sills gets into trouble, and Barrie decides to commit an illegal act. She commits a small crime to help Sills out and gets caught. So that's basically the story. It's beautifully told. The writing is just beautiful. This is a profound narrative meditation on the past. It's kind of Proustian, but not too Proustian, because if it gets as Proustian as Proust, I'm out of there. I hate that, the Proustian level of Proustianism. This is just enough that I loved it. Meditating on the past, friendships from youth, a sense of being alive and having all your possibilities stretched out into the future, and then by the time you are approaching middle age, feeling all of that kind of closing down on you. It's just gorgeous. The enigmatic title comes from the name of a painting that actually exists, which Lorrie Moore happened upon while she was in the middle of writing this novel, and bought and incorporated into the novel. And the painting is of two girls and a bunch of frogs who are bandaged. And in this novel, this is a fictionally true event that the boys in the town used to take their BB guns out and practice trying to shoot the frogs, and many of them they killed, but some they just injured, and Sills and Barry would go out and try to administer first aid to the frogs, which didn't usually end up being effective, but Sills made a painting of it, and that's where the title comes from. The writing is so beautiful. So let me share 3 paragraph-long quotes with you and just give you a taste of it. The first one is Barry reflecting on her childhood and remembering the absence where her identity should have been, and that emptiness really carries through to her present life in Paris in her late 30s. I often think that at the center of me is a voice that at last did split, a house in my heart so invaded with other people and their speech, friends I believed I was devoted to, people whose lives I can only guess at now, that it gives me the impression I am simply a collection of them, that they all existed for themselves, but had inadvertently formed me, then vanished. But what? Should I have been expected to create my own self out of nothing, out of thin air, and alone? Another paragraph of her looking back on her childhood. My childhood had no narrative. It was all just a combination of air and no air, waiting for life to happen, the body to get big, the mind to grow fearless. There were no stories, no ideas, not really, not yet. Just things unearthed from elsewhere and propped up later to help the mind get around. At the time, however, it was liquid, like a song. Nothing much. It was just a space with some people in it. In another part of the novel, she remembers going back to a high school reunion when she was, I think, 27, and meeting with Sills and realizing that they've completely grown apart. I think Sills never left the hometown, and certainly Barry had, and they just had nothing really to talk about. And as she's driving out of her hometown, she breaks down and weeps. I cried for everyone, and for all the scrabbly, funny love one sent out into the world, like some hit song that enters space and bounds off to another galaxy. A tune so pretty, you think the words are true. You do. There was never any containing a song like that, keeping it. It went off and out, speeding out of earshot, or imagining, or any reach at all, like a rocket invented in sleep. I would say that's maybe one of my favorite passages from the book. It almost makes me kind of emotional, and I'm not sure why. It struck me more as I was reading it there than it had when I read the novel a few days ago. It's just really a tug on the heartstrings in terms of what do we do with our memories, and how do we, well, I don't know what to say, just what she said. So this is a short little novel. I think on the Kindle it was like 100 pages or something. It's my first by Lorrie Moore. I wasn't even sure if Lorrie Moore was a man or a woman. She's a she. Alright, so the wind got the best of my microphone for this last 30 seconds or so. I was basically saying that, according to some reviews that I'd read, this novel was kind of a breakthrough for Lorrie Moore. Her previous writing had been more humorous than anything, and with this novel she kind of got down to some deeper material and a more emotionally compelling narrative voice. Based on that, I'm very much looking forward to reading more by her. Now, the Storyland setting, it's this really cheesy amusement park with fairy tale themes, and the picture that kind of is like a fairy tale with the frogs in it, and then the girl kissing the frog who might turn into a prince is woven through the storyline. There's a fairy tale structure, or there's a lot of allusions to fairy tales, which, if you're into fairy tales, and I'm not particularly, so there wasn't so much of it that it was a turn-off, because I hate fairy tale retellings in fiction. And this isn't a fairy tale retelling, or if it is, I missed that. But certainly the many allusions to fairy tales adds that kind of a dimension to the novel, and it just pulled me deeper into the story that, with the exception of this dramatic incident, was a very quiet, reflective story. I loved it. Thanks for watching.